That's great. All right, we've given people 6 minutes, and maybe it's just a small group of us tonight. That's okay.
Dan's coming later.
Yeah, I'll let people in as they show up. But thank you guys for joining us. I think I've introduced myself to everyone, but I want to do it again for people. We're going to post this on YouTube tomorrow-ish. My name is Kim Temple, and I'm with Runaway Realty here in Puerto Morelos, Mexico. And we help people buy and sell real estate in the best little beach town ever, anywhere on the planet, in our opinion, in Puerto Morelos, which is just south of Cancun. So thank you for joining us. We typically talk about things related mostly to Puerto Morelos, but some of them are also more broadly applicable to buying in other parts of Mexico. So it'll be useful for all sorts of people. And I want to introduce Keith Smith, who's here. He's an agent in our office as well and a good friend. And he's going to be joining us tonight to give his input and answer questions as well. So thanks so much. We are recording the meeting. If you don't want to be on camera, it's fine. You can turn your camera off. But since we're a small group, I'd love for it to be more conversational if you're up for it. I love it when we have a few less people so we can do that. Tonight, we were gonna talk about basically this, I didn't make this up, this phenomenon of Margarita fever. And I'm not, yeah, it is a good marketing thing, but I did not make it up. So it's kind of commonly known in the real estate industry here is people, come to Mexico, have a great time, fall in love with it, and end up making really risky and decisions that don't make a lot of sense about real estate. They kind of just do things that they would never do at home. And it's not, Margarita fever is this the word? It's not really about drinking. It's more about the excitement. I think people get kind of overwhelmed and they want to make it happen and they're having a great time. And so, they make decisions that they wouldn't have made and go about doing things in a way that they wouldn't have done at home. So it is a thing that happens. And so what we want to do is arm people with information because it is exciting. But before you go shopping and start thinking about buying, we want to arm you with some information that would help you slow down and make better decisions about real estate, basically, because it's a big commitment of money. And I guess the first thing I want to say is that we want people to understand is that buying real estate in Mexico is very, very, well, all of Mexico is very different than the US and Canada and anywhere else you're coming from in the world. Things are done differently here. There's a different set of laws. There's different cultural expectations. There's different safeguards. So while you may have a lot of experience buying and selling real estate where you live, it's likely not super transferable to your experience here. Not necessarily in the legal section of it, but in all the rest. And I'll explain that. So here in the US and Canada in particular, those are the areas that I know of, and I'm sure in other more developed countries, there's a very well-regulated real estate market. You have an MLS, all the information you upload to the MLS has to be correct. You have forms that are standard forms and someone's liable if they fill it out incorrectly. There's, if a seller doesn't disclose everything, you have recourse. You can sue anyone at any, if you feel you've been wronged, you can sue people and get some recourse that way. And so, there's mortgage lenders who, oh, I can't hear you. You're muted.
I forgot to unmute. Oh. You were talking MLS. I actually have a report from a state site MLS. This is the one that I got on my grandmother's house. And for people who aren't familiar, it shows the dimensions of the lot or the property. It has the legal address. It has some official government type stuff. It has the school zone information. It has the names of past owners, the past buying and selling transactions, past tax history. This one goes from 2021 all the way down to 2014. It has the property characteristics of the building. It tells you what the building's made out of, the year it was made. It has the square feet of the building and the lot. And then it has the building features on it, like, you know, does it have a screen porch or does it have a basement and all this sort of stuff. So if you're not familiar with the MLS in the United States, I'm not sure what the equivalent is in Canada. This is sort of what Kim is talking about, that when we're working in the United States, all this information is at our fingertips. And when we're working here in Mexico, absolutely nothing. Sometimes it's at our fingertips.
Yeah. And also, but isn't there a board that's governing the MLS to make sure the information is correct, and you get in trouble if you put the incorrect information up?
Yeah, that reports from the Georgia MLS, which would be basically proctored by the Georgia Association of Realtors. And there's a little caveat that that's on all of the MLS listings that says that the information is accurate to the best of the agent's knowledge. So there's a little bit of a cover for them there, but yes, if you were to intentionally put false information into the MLS, that would be a big no-no.
So all of that was created, you know, to protect the parties. They've tried to very formalize and regulate real estate transactions. And just the culture allows some safeguards in the US and Canada. You can seek legal relief and receive it in a relatively timely manner. None of that exists here. So when you're even just looking at properties, it's hard to find properties. There's no one central place. This 0.2 homes has become a de facto MLS for this area, but it's in no way an MLS. No one's monitoring it. No one's making sure licensed realtors are on it. No one's making sure the information is correct. There's no recourse if it's incorrect. People are putting different prices, different square footage, like it's insane. So it is a tool to get pictures, basically. But it's not something that you can rely on to find a property on your own and find someone who's an actual listing agent. So it is a tool that we have. So obviously we help people buy and sell properties all day, every day. It can be done. But if you come in with this framework in mind, you're very much mistaken. There's not a lot of built-in safeguards for buyers in particular. So the good news is that there's ways to, what I'm going to do is tell you today how you can protect yourself with that, and ways to make sure that you are not getting scammed or making a mistake. And the first one of that, I said this was 7 things to know. There's probably a jillion more things to know, and I don't even know if we'll get through the 7 big categories I have here. But so the first one is, you're not in Kansas anymore. We say you're in Mexico. It's a whole different thing, whole different ball game. The information that you rely on to make decisions in the US or Canada is not available here. And so you really are going to rely on what my number 1 thing is that you need to work with a professional real estate agent. And this isn't just a plug for us. Of course, we want to work with you and we want to help buyers and sellers here, but it's silly to try to buy property on your own here. It doesn't make any sense. If you don't speak Spanish, you don't know the laws here, you don't know the area, you don't know what comparable sales are because you haven't been doing it like we have for 10 years. It doesn't make sense to try to do it by yourself. And you don't have to pay the realtor. When a realtor helps you, they're getting paid a commission by the seller most of the time. 95% of the time, that's what's happening. Sometimes you may have a seller who doesn't want to pay a commission. You've fallen in love with the property. You want that property. They don't want to pay a commission. And you may end up deciding that you want to pay a buyer agent to help you through the process because you don't know what you're doing. But it doesn't make sense not to use an actual professional realtor, not your taxi driver, not your golfing buddy, not the bartender, not the waiter. All those people are realtors here, by the way. Because it's not regulated. There is a licensing requirement, but no one's enforcing it. And it's become almost a joke. Like it's not, having a license doesn't mean that you're ethical, and trained, and not having a license doesn't mean that you're not. So that it makes it even more difficult for consumers to figure out who's a decent person to work with. And so what I would recommend are these things. One, if they're licensed by the state, at least they've gone through that process and paid the fee. It makes it shows the signs of being a professional. You're not just doing this on the side. You're not a taxi driver who happens to also sell real estate. So if you've gone through the motions to get your 90 hours of training and get your license, that's amazing. That's something to look for. The other thing to look for is if the person is a member of AMPI, which is our National Real Estate Association, or Canaco, which is a related real estate association. It's AMPI or Canaco. I'll put it in the chat. But those two groups work closely together. And if you're a member of AMPI or Canaco, you have agreed to abide by ethical standards, and you can be grieved if you don't. And so there is some recourse. If your realtor does something wrong, or between realtors, there's a little bit of recourse. You can go file a grievance against someone if something goes bad. So that helps. The other thing to look at is whether the person has an office, whether they have a website, how long have they lived and worked in Mexico. Everyone's kind of popping up as everyone's a realtor right now. And, ask around, because a lot of people recommend realtors that they've never used just because they're a popular name or something. So we see that all the time, like people who've never bought or sold property are recommending realtors. And so it's just do a little bit of homework and just make sure that you're comfortable with the person. So that's all I'm going to say about that. We would love to be your person, but there are other good realtors out there. Did you have a question, Vivian?
Yeah, just wanted to know if I have a question, can I ask it now or do I ask it at the end?
Oh, what is it about this?
Mhm.
What's the question? Go ahead.
Yeah, well, you said it right. Everybody is a realtor here, but we know quite quickly who are the real ones than the ones that are not. But in my case, as you know, I'm buying directly with the owner. So in a case like this, what do I say? I want to have a realtor, and then I put her in a situation where she has to pay how do you do that? Like she doesn't come with a realtor. I know you suggested people, but just wanted to know in general, how do you deal with a situation like that? You suggest a realtor, or what do you say?
Well, so typically you would be looking with a realtor. And so the realtor would have contacted the seller and said, hey, I have a client who's interested. Are you willing to pay a commission? And they say yes or no. And if they don't want to, and you still want to pursue that property, then the realtor could ask you if you want to pay them. They're not going to work for free, but you could ask them to pay for you to pay. So because the front end is not you approaching the owner, the front end is you working hand in hand with the realtor at finding properties available, and then they approach the owner. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, when you come in later, they're just going to say, no, why would they pay a commission? They already have an agreement with you. So there's no incentive for them. You've already contacted them and you're already in touch. So they're not going to pay a commission at that point. Especially, if they didn't have it listed with a realtor. Does that make sense?
You had mentioned that in that kind of a situation, sometimes people will hire the buyer that's buying this property privately, would hire a realtor to sort of work on their behalf, and obviously the buyer's paying that instead of the seller. So is that something that's more typical in these kinds of situations? I can't imagine doing this without a realtor. I'm sure, Vivian, you're doing great. Sorry, I don't mean to freak you out, but I tend to be a little bit more on the neurotic side.
And so the ideal way to do it would be hook up with, find a realtor that you trust, work with them, let them get to know what you want, let them go out and find it. And if they make the first contact with the seller, they have a much better chance of getting the seller to pay a commission. If you go around and find your property yourself, you don't need a realtor, blah, blah, blah. You make the first contact, you're coming into agreement, and then you realize, oh shit, I'm not sure I've even asked the right questions. I don't know how to get this done. Something came up. Now I want a realtor. The sellers at that point, they're not going to say, hey, okay, I'll pay a commission another realtor to come in. So
Can I
that's
ask how
you.
much is the commission here in Mexico, between what and what?
In Puerto Morelos, it's 6% plus IVA is the standard commission. And in other parts of, I mean, I don't know what the rest of the Mexico is, but other parts of the Riviera Maya, it's typically 7 to 8%, but not here. So yeah, so it's some people are willing to pay just so they can have someone to help coordinate everything, because it can be overwhelming. Especially if you're not here. You know, a lot of people come, they make the offer and then they leave and they're not going to come back to closing. So there's a lot to do. Does that answer the question?
For me, yeah, I'm fine.
Okay, great. Okay, so the other thing is that experience counts. It really does count in transactions here. I've been doing this 10 years. I don't know how many transactions, and things come up every year that I've never seen before. So it's really important. This is when your real estate association comes in handy, like if a realtor is working with a broker, it comes in handy, because you've got to know even what questions to ask, because there's no standard disclosures. There's no, you know, it's just, you want someone experienced to handle whatever comes up and work with you and hold your hand through it and get you through to the end. Okay, enough of that. So you're going to work with an experienced realtor, and the other thing that you need to do is understand your ownership options. We went over this last week, so a few of you were here last week. Basically, as a foreigner buying in the restricted zone, which is this zone along the border, land and sea border of Mexico, you have to own property in a trust, and that trust is called a fideicomiso. So that's how the government wants you to own property, and for residential property. If you are going to have some commercial purposes, it might make sense to open a Mexican corporation to own a property, but those are very limited circumstances, and you would really want to talk to an attorney and accountant before you decided to do that. Another way to own property is to form a corporation outside of Mexico and have that corporation be the beneficiary of the trust. Some people do that, and there's different pros and cons for that as well. But the simplest and the way that they intended for you to own is with just primary beneficiaries on a trust. The trust, it lasts for 50 years. It's a very safe way to own. There's a Mexican bank who's a trustee on your trust, and that bank has way less rights than, say, a mortgage lender. They don't have a right to enter the property. They can't loan against the property. They can't borrow against the property. It's not an asset of the bank. They serve merely an administrative function. And really, it's just, they created this as kind of a legal fiction to get around the prohibition in the Constitution against ownership. So it's not a sketchy thing. The government created this vehicle for foreign ownership. They want to encourage foreign ownership, but you have to own it in the trust. The pros of the trust are that you can name your beneficiaries in the terms of the trust, so that you don't have to get caught in a foreign court, a probate court. And in Mexico, and no other country really is obliged to follow the will, a foreign will. So having a will in your home country does not protect your property in Mexico. They're not going to recognize it as legal. So in your trust, you're going to go ahead and set primary beneficiaries and substitute beneficiaries.
So the beneficiary, it's almost like a will in a sense when you go to fideicomiso. They are the ones who ask you for beneficiary, is that right?
Yeah. And so, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Yeah, so the beneficiaries are all be set up in the will. When the primary beneficiaries, if there's two, if one passes away, the property goes to the other. When they both pass away, it goes to the substitute beneficiaries. All as a matter of law, you don't, as a contract basically. And so you don't have to end up in court. Any questions about that? About your ownership?
Do they ask for one name as a beneficiary? Do they ask for 3 names? Because you mentioned,
As many as you want.
oh, you're the one, or the person is, okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions about the trust? Anyone? All right. The other thing you need to understand before you start looking at property and thinking about buying is that it's an all cash market. Meaning you're not carrying bags of cash, but there's no financing available in general for buying properties here. There's no like traditional mortgage loans offered by US Canadian lenders or lenders anywhere else, including Mexico, to foreigners in Mexico. So if you want to buy property, most people are borrowing against other assets or using retirement or, savings accounts to buy here. There are some companies that have kind of popped up recently that are financing US citizens buying and Canadian actually buying property in Mexico. They tend to be shorter term loans, very high, what's it called? Initial deposit, I don't know, very high down payment. And higher interest rate, but those are available. And so it would be helpful if you had needed a kind of a bridge loan because maybe you can't withdraw your retirement funds for a couple of years, but you want to get this property and get it off the market and get, lock the price in. You could take out like a shorter term loan from one of these companies to get by. But I haven't had anyone use that yet. I'm curious to see how that's going to work out. So in general, it's all cash. We, do everything electronically, so it's not actual cash, but yeah. Any questions about that? No? All right, so the sales are cash, buyers pay the closing costs. So when you're setting your budget, also remember that you're gonna have closing costs on top of that, and that could be quite a chunk of money. The buyer's closing costs typically include purchase acquisition taxes. It includes the cost to set up or transfer a fideicomiso. If you're buying from another foreigner, you're going to transfer. If you're buying from a Mexican citizen, you need to create the fideicomiso. It includes the cost of legal fees, the cost to hire a notario who's a kind of a semi-governmental. They are lawyers, but they've gone on to get another designation. You have to have a notario to transfer real property. And so everyone in a real estate transaction has to have one. And then some registration fees. Did I forget anything? Oh, the cost to set up and transfer the fideicomiso. So that chunk varies depending on the price of your property. If you're buying something under $100,000, it can be quite hefty. It's like 13 to 14% of your purchase price. At the $300,000 mark, it's around 8% of the purchase price. When you get up to $1 million, it's like 5 to 6% of the purchase price. Just the purchase acquisition taxes in Puerto Morelos are 3.3% of the purchase price. So it's a chunk of money. So those all have to be paid for closing. You won't be able to buy your property without paying those. So that's something to keep in mind and factor in when you're setting your budget. Any questions about that?
Yes. Who pays the compraventa contract? The how do you say it in English? The offer of purchase? The buyer or the seller?
The buyer. The buyer.
Okay. So funny because I heard so many things about this. Many is the sellers who did in the past, because I know people who bought directly and Mexicans also. So it's just interesting to see there is no law, I think, regarding this as such.
No, there's no law. It's just the custom.
Yeah.
Okay. So the other thing that you really should understand is that you're going to need an attorney. The notario in a transaction is an attorney, but they're not your attorney, and they're not obligated to look out for your best interest at all, which is kind of annoying. They do have to do due diligence. They can't transfer real property if there's a lien on it, and they'll be held liable if they do, but they're not going to advise you how to structure the deal to your advantage. So it really is in your best, and they're also not going to read through all the documents to you in English if you need that. So it's really in your best interest to get an attorney to handle that and to help you with the closing coordination and the transfer of title. They're very inexpensive compared to attorneys in other places. And I just think of it as insurance. It's just an insurance policy. You need to have someone there to read over everything for you and to advise you, and to keep the process moving. Going directly with the notario can be very difficult. You get kind of lost in the shuffle. if you have an attorney to advocate for you, you can push it through a little faster.
How
Anything
much
else?
can the cost be of somebody like this? Maybe that's
It's, yeah, I mean, everyone's different, so you'd have to check with them.
as you say, it's inexpensive. I'm just wondering what are the amounts that you've seen in the past?
Well, it's usually a percentage of the purchase price. They're not charging you like $500 an hour like they do in the US, or $200 an hour. It's usually a flat rate. So like a few $1,000s, depending on the purchase price. Keith, were you gonna say something?
I was just going to say, Kim, talking about using a closing attorney, and I just wanted to tell everyone, as someone who did this relatively recently, we bought our house 2 years ago, closed on it 2 years ago. It really, it's worth the money. When you have a closing attorney that's working for you, they're going to coordinate and handle everything. They're going to, if you're working with a realtor, they're going to send the documents to the realtor. They're going to provide them to you for a signature and explanation and signature, and then we'll send them back to the attorney, and everything is handled for you. You can do this all without a closing attorney. You can go to a notario, but just like Kim was talking about the fideicomiso, when you're closing directly with a notario without your own attorney, chances are when it's time for you to need your fideicomiso, the notario is going to say, okay, go get your fideicomiso. And that falls on you. So if you're sort of familiar with the system here and you speak fluent Spanish and you can call the bank and talk to them, that's great. But if you don't fall into that category, then it's well worth the money for the closing attorney to have somebody do all of that on your behalf.
Thank you.
That was it.
That was it. The other advice, the thing that you need to know is that, so typically in Mexico, historically, they didn't use escrow accounts at all. It's not a thing that really even exists in Mexico. An escrow account is just a trust account where an escrow agent holds money in a trust account until the closing. Because in Mexico, between two Mexicans, transactions can move very quickly within a few weeks or so. It was just very common to give the seller some money to show them that you're going to buy the property. They hold it off the market and you move to closing very quickly. But because we're foreigners, our transactions take longer because we have to have this trust. So it's more risky to give a seller money and then hope that they're going to stick around and not sell it to anyone else and give us our money back if they do, waiting for 2 or 3 months for us to close. And so escrow accounts come in very handy in those situations. And I think they protect both parties. And so I'd never recommend closing without an escrow account. And the other thing is we've run into several issues recently where people have done direct. They didn't want to use an escrow account and the money's gone, like it's in the ether somewhere. So and the people already signed the papers. This was one specific incident, which is not a good one. So I think, it's easier to just have the escrow account. The money's there, the money's there when you sign the paperwork as a seller. It's just simpler to do it that way. And it doesn't make sense to be so risky the other way. The escrow accounts, because they weren't common in Mexico, if you have a Mexican seller, it can be very difficult to get them to agree to it. That's where an experienced agent comes in handy and they can, explain the benefits and get them on board with that. But again, it's just kind of another form of insurance, especially for a buyer, to make sure that your money is going to be there. If something goes south with the transaction, you can get your money back out.
I have a question. How do you reach an escrow account?
Yeah, you can just Google, there's several escrow companies
Okay.
in the Riviera Maya, and you just talk to them and fill out the paperwork and stuff.
Okay, so these are private companies. They're what?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're not related to the government at all.
And how do you say escrow account in Spanish?
I don't know, actually.
What?
Keith, do you remember? I don't. Yeah.
Kim, I think it's Cuenta de Garantía.
Cuenta de
Right.
ganancia, that's what I saw the other day. Okay, so that's what they use here as a term?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we are moving through this. That was actually, was that 7? I might have gone all the way through it. You guys are not asking many questions. So, basically the big one is, the big thing to understand is really that you are in a different system, and to not assume that things are going to work the way that you have had them work before. And just make sure you protect yourself as much as possible by working with professionals and just being super careful. All right, somebody has to have some questions. Anyone? Jenny, are you just trying to win another gift certificate? Are you here? Well, maybe she's not here.
Can you tell us something about the down payment?
What do you mean?
When you give an apartado, a deposit to say I'm interested, is there like a percentage that is non-refundable if any of the parties?
It just depends on how you negotiate it. So there's no law about any of this. So typically, in the contract, there'll be a penalty of 10%, or just 10% or 20%.
10%, that's what I heard.
Yeah, that if you fail to close, you would lose that.
And if the seller retrieves, then it's a whole amount is refunded, no?
If that's what you've agreed to in the contract, yes.
It's all about what has been
Writing. Mhm.
thank you.
All right.
Okay, Kim,
Uh-huh.
can you hear me?
Yes.
We are interested in probably condos, especially Selva Escondida.
Uh-huh.
So if we were working with them, I'm assuming that we would contact you and you could be the person that went with us to view those condos, even if we're looking maybe at something that's still being built. Does that make sense?
So if you've already contacted Selva Escondida, they won't let us work with you.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, we sent an email to them just for pricing information.
That'll do it. So,
Oh no.
yeah. We can try, but
We
they, yeah,
Months ago, we didn't even think that would be a problem.
yeah, as long as you're in their system, their position is you're their client. Again, you could hire us.
Okay.
But they're not going to pay a commission to us if they've
Okay.
already got you in their system.
Well, and we're not like sold on them necessarily. So
Mhm.
if we come over spring break, do you have kind of a set way that we could maybe look at a few of the different condos? We've driven around,
Mhm.
but we've not been in any of them really.
Yeah, we would just do showings like we do with anything else. We would, before your visit, we'd talk on the phone and figure out what your price range is and what you want to see, and then we would set up those showings for when you're here.
Okay, so we really should not try to get information on any others in the meantime.
Well, yeah, you can get in touch with us now. We can do a Zoom or something, and then we can contact them on you and register you. And once
Okay.
we've done that, then we can just give you all the information they were going to give you anyway. It's just that they will then be paying a commission.
Okay, perfect. And then I'm assuming that you would have information about recent sales, like comps in each of those developments.
No, none
You
of
don't?
that. Well, they're not, if you're talking about new construction, they're not negotiating their price. The price is the price. Is that
Okay. What about they have like Selva has some existing
Mhm.
phase as well. So would you have data on what those are selling for, or does it not work that way in Mexico?
So there's no comparable sales information. It's not, sales information is confidential. So you can't go somewhere to find out what someone paid for their condo. I can tell you what, they they've been selling these for a while, and so they had different price points, right? So they have the pre-construction, the pre-sale, and the friends and family discount. I mean, there's many, many different price points. And they're reselling some, and I can tell you the resale price point, but
I think that is asking. So you'd have a ballpark if we were interested in an existing phase where there have been some resold. You'd have a good ballpark in terms of what they're selling for.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we have not confirmed our flights yet. I'm a teacher, so we're thinking that we'll be there for spring break, but we'll definitely keep coming to these on the Wednesdays.
Oh, cool.
And we've come to a lot of in the past too, I think during COVID or maybe pre-COVID, but yeah, we're looking really forward to that. We're pretty excited.
Awesome. Well,
Thank
yeah,
you.
let us know, give us some heads up before you come, so we'll have time, because that's the other thing, because there's no MLS, there's no lock boxes, there's, it's kind of a chaotic mess. It takes a while for us to find the properties, make appointments at the properties. We just need some lead time before you get here. So
And how much is that? Like 6 to 8 weeks, do you think?
No, just a couple weeks.
A couple weeks.
Because
Okay,
because there's no, we need to know what's on the market right when you arrive, not 6 weeks before.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of getting on your schedule in case you have multiple people maybe coming over spring.
Yeah, is it around Easter? That is a pretty busy time, but yeah, we can, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the last full week of March, into the March 23rd, I think is my first day away from school. And then that next full week.
Nice.
Yeah, we're super excited.
Where are you guys?
We are just outside of Indianapolis, Indiana.
Cool.
And we've been to Mexico, I think, do you think 4 or 5 times? Maybe 4 or 5 times. We have been to Costa Rica, Guatemala, Belize. We just love but we're very committed to the Puerto Morelos area. And I think we'll have probably about 4 more years before we're able to move full time. So we'd like to buy before then, and we would love some advice eventually about the idea of maybe buying and having something rental, if that's a possibility.
Everybody's doing it. It's a
Okay. Yeah, well, thank you.
Sure.
I have to.
Kim, similar to Jenny, we're actually coming down over Christmas, and I'll be there the first week of January. What's your availability like that first week? Would I be able to meet up with you at all?
Yeah, let's talk privately and we'll set something up. But
Okay,
yes.
I didn't know if that was too short a notice. We're just booking last minute here. We're actually going to be staying part of the time with someone else who's bought with you before,
Oh, cool.
and resort for a week and then with them for a few nights. So
Yeah, get in touch so we can get on because it sounds like you're not going to be here the whole time.
no, but we're going to be very close to Puerto Morelos. We're staying at a resort just outside. So.
Okay. No, awesome. Yeah, get in touch, Kyle.
Yeah, I'll send you an email.
I'm here. I'm not going anywhere.
No, I just know people have holiday plans, but the first
Yeah.
week of January, we're down there till about the 7th. So
Oh, nice. Well, it'll be beautiful. It's a good time of year to
sure
be
it
here.
will. We come down a lot over Christmas.
Oh, nice.
Better than Calgary, I'll tell you that much.
I believe you. All right. Anybody else? So we have, I guess, we need to do we have a drawing. We have a gift certificate tonight, you guys. And we also have a 7 things you need to know before buying in Mexico. We have a download on our website, which I probably should have mentioned at the top of this. It's pretty much what we just talked about, but if you want to download it to look at it later, you just go to our resources page on the runawayrealty.com website. And there's some other good stuff over there. And Keith is going to do the honors of who you have really good chances tonight because there weren't that many people here.
So the gift certificate tonight is 500 pesos for Blue Morelos, which is a little restaurant on the port side. If you're not familiar, it opened about 2 years ago. Very fresh and yummy tostados, tacos, ceviches, good selection of beers. Just a nice place to go. So like Kim said, there's only 6 names in the bowl. So the odds are in your favor. So I'm giving it a shake. And our winner tonight is Kyle.
Ooh, with Kyle's gonna be
Well,
here.
thank you very
soon.
much.
Kyle, they have killer mojitos too. I'm not
There's
even a
no such
mojito
thing as a
fan.
bad mojito.
I'm not a mojito fan, but they've won me over with their mojitos.
I'm a big fan.
Oh, okay, I'll enjoy.
Thank you very much.
So-
That's awesome.
Sure, we'll send you, well, can you email me?
Yeah, I'll email you right after this.
Awesome. Kim@runawayrealty.com, and then we'll send you the gift certificate. Or you
Cool.
can pick it up when you're here.
Thank you.
Sure, you're welcome. Thanks so much for joining us, guys. If you think of questions later, let us know. Oh, I'm getting a message from Denise, but I can't pull it up right now. Let's see. Denise, do you want to ask your question or are we done here? Okay. I'll get back to you, Denise. Sorry. Okay, I think that's it, guys. Thank you so much. Salute.
Bye, everyone.
All right, good
Thank you.
night. Bye,
Bye.
Jenny. Bye, Kyle. Bye, Denise.